Influencer Brittany Dawn has just settled with the state of Texas in its lawsuit against her for selling customized fitness plans that were not actually customized. Now, if you're an influencer, what do you need to know about this? Because she's paying a bunch of money to people that she sold products to. The state came down real hard on her, and they were about to go to trial and threatening to take her, sort of blow her up, essentially, legally and financially. So, what do you need to know to avoid that? And what happened to Brittany Dawn? Who is she? What's going on? I'm Kevin Kneupper. I'm an attorney from Kneupper and Covey, and I'm going to walk you through this settlement, the details of it, how it works, and what influencers need to know about this stuff, and what kind of people need to know about this stuff. So if you don't know who Brittany Dawn is, I've done several videos on her on what's been going on with this lawsuit. It's an interesting lawsuit for influencers because it's sort of one of the a new wave of lawsuits suing influencers who endorse or sell products that are junk. And there have been many of those over the last few years. We've all seen the NFTs, and we all know, a lot of this stuff, a lot of people that, especially younger people, are following have not been really, that ethical in some scenarios, when, especially with NFTs and things like that, have been promoting, products that aren't real and with representations that are false. And that's what was alleged here, is that Brittany Dawn, she was sort of originally this fitness influencer. She is now a Christianity influencer. So now she's sort of doing spiritual retreats and things like that, and charging people for her kind of advice as a as a Christian. And before, that's a little less harmful, I guess, in terms of like physical potential harm than what was going on earlier, which was she was a fitness influencer. And the state of Texas sued her and alleged that she was telling people that she was going to give them customized diet plans, that they were going to be based on their body, on their weight, on their goals. Did you want to lose weight, gain weight, whatever was going on? And also was making statements that suggested to people that she had expertise in treating eating disorders. And that's what the state of Texas claimed. And I think that is why they brought the hammer down on her. The state of Texas went after her and said, hey, they sued her for just millions, and we're going to come, basically blow you up financially and legally because of you were doing this. And Brittany Dawn fought this very hard right up to trial. That happens a lot. You might kind of wonder sometimes, I wonder sometimes, frankly, why some defendants fight their cases to the very end. The best that I can, because it seems to be illogical, and frankly is a little bit illogical to go right up to trial when your case is not very good. And I don't think her case here was. And you wonder, why do people do that? I do think that there is some mentality sometimes among people that they, sometimes their lawyers are telling them, oh, I'll win, while they are billing by the hour. and that necessarily colors, the judgment of the lawyer in terms of optimism. And I also think that sometimes people take a lot of time to get emotionally adjusted to the idea that perhaps they don't look to people the way they think they do. I've seen some people involved in cases where they just, you're looking at it going, you're out of your gourd to even be fighting this, and then they just want to fight to the very end, and then it costs them quite a lot more money because fighting to the end, definitely this is a bigger thing, I think, than she probably could have got out of this with a lot less attorney's fees, a lot less money, but we are where we are. And that's she has agreed to a settlement for $400,000. It will be phased in over time. That is not not super unusual, but also not super common either. I'm going to walk you through how this works, show you the settlement, and her explanation for why she did this, and what you may want to know as an influencer in terms of how do you avoid having a government come after you if you're in the scenario that she claims that she was in. So let's look at the settlement and see what Brittany Dawn is ultimately paying on this. If you want more background details on it, you can look at some of the other videos I've done. I'll put some links to that in the description of the video. Okay, so here's the settlement, and this is something has not actually been signed off on by the judge because of the sort of the unique nature of this case. The judge does need to sign it, mainly because it's sort of a public thing, and the judge is going to get what's called continuing jurisdiction over the case, and so judges have to agree to that. You can't just sort of say it. And in most cases, like if you're doing a private lawsuit, if there was a settlement, really most of the time the suit would just sort of disappear. You would say, I dismiss. You wouldn't say why. There would be a private settlement no one can see. In cases where the state government is suing you, that stuff is more public because it's a public entity. They can't really agree to these sort of secret settlements and whatever. And so it works a little bit differently than it would if you personally ever get involved in like a lawsuit with another person. You can see here that the state of Texas had sued Brittany Dawn Davis, which is her full name, and then her fitness company, this LLC right here. And the title of this document is an agreed final judgment and permanent injunction. So what are those two things? A final judgment is the sort of a legal document that occurs at the very end of a lawsuit where the judge sort of creates this order that you owe them money or you have to do certain things. A permanent injunction is a like an order by the court that when it says it's permanent, that means it just goes on forever. There's no end to it. There can be a temporary injunction, which has a like certain date that it terminates. An injunction is just an order to not do certain things. And so we'll see what she's been ordered to do in here. And this is a settlement. So probably like if you are on Team Brittany Dawn, I know there are some people who are on Team Brittany Dawn. You may not be happy with this. You may think it's too much money. If you're on Team I paid for a fitness plan and I'm really unhappy that I didn't get what I actually paid for, then you may be unhappy as well because the amount may not be sort of the full amount of what people were injured from. But, you know, settlements are always kind of like a little bit in the middle. And this one may be driven, I think, by her not having full money right now to pay this. Or to really pay back everybody what happened to them. So there's some sort of legal stuff here. These are stipulations is what it starts with. Stipulations are where both parties agree to certain facts. And so there's just sort of, it's like an introduction to the settlement. They both say, here's what's sort of going on that we both agree to. Some of these are just sort of legal stuff, like just an example, they'll say, we agree that you had an opportunity to confer with counsel, which means I talked to a lawyer. That's so the person can't come back, in this case, Brittany can't come back and say, I didn't know what was going on, I didn't have a lawyer. We agree not to contest to this. We say that we all participated in negotiations and all this stuff, and that is all just designed to sort of say everybody agrees this is a real enforceable judgment, that we're all on the same page on this thing. Then they have this clause here, which is a little bit significant legally, that says the parties agree that this court shall retain jurisdiction of this matter for the purposes of construction, modification, and enforcement of this judgment, which means that if Brittany Dawn does not follow through on this, the state of Texas can go right back into court and ask for orders, ask for the court to make her do stuff. And so this will be something that's not just sort of, it doesn't just fizzle out. It stays with the court, even if nothing will probably be happening if she keeps making payments under this. But it does sort of put some teeth into the settlement. They start doing some, a lot of this is general stuff. She waives the right to appeal the judgment, which is, these are just sort of, you would expect that because they want this to be a final agreement. They say the terms attached to Brittany Dawn Davis and to Brittany Dawn Fitness LLC, which just means that both Brittany Dawn and this company she created are bound by this settlement. Then these are interesting to people who've been following the case. These next two paragraphs, they say the parties stipulate that the civil penalties under paragraph 5.1a awarded herein are fines, penalties, or forfeitures payable to and for the benefit of a governmental unit and are not compensation for actual pecuniary loss. That means just loss of money. Accordingly, these amounts are non-dischargeable under this section of the bankruptcy code in any bankruptcy filed by the defendants. And they've got another one here that says that's the same thing for restitution. What does that mean? That means that if Brittany Dawn tomorrow or the day after the court sends the judgment were to file bankruptcy, the amount would not go away in the bankruptcy. She could go through the whole bankruptcy on any other debt she has, but this debt will survive. And I think legally, it doesn't really matter. She stipulated to this, which means she can't go into the bankruptcy and like fight that. I think she would have lost that anyway. I did a video separately about that, but that's something that the government wants because they don't, you can see in the terms here, a lot of them are designed to sort of prevent her from coming up with ways to get around the settlement. It doesn't necessarily mean that they think she's going to do that, but they obviously, they don't want that happening. And so they want to upfront make sure that the common ways that people try to evade an order are like knocked out by the terms. This paragraph is one that's interesting, particularly if you've been following this. So it's her explanation of what happened a little bit, and they stipulated to this, which means that both of them sort of agree that this is factually true. Although the language is wordsmith, if you look at it closely, it says, defendant Brittany Dawn Davis admits wrongdoing, but was overwhelmed by the unexpected number of customers who purchased programs from her website. Defendants claim their failure to provide all services that were ordered was due to the volume of consumers. While defendants admit wrongdoing, they maintain that at no time did defendants fail to provide purchase services due to any malicious intent. So what is she saying in regular person language? What this is saying is that Brittany Dawn's version of it, like what she says happened is that she basically like thought she was going to sell a few fitness plans and then just thousands upon thousands of people buy it from the website. And then now she can't actually do the customized plans that she was promising. This is something to sort of pause on a little bit. And you'll notice that what they actually technically stipulate to is that Brittany Dawn claims this and that Brittany Dawn maintains this. So the state of Texas is not saying I admit this is true, but it is saying, okay, like I think this is probably in this kind of when they're negotiating this privately, this is something the defendants want to put in so that they can kind of get their story out there. And the state of Texas is, I think, saying like, okay, we aren't going to say that's true, but we are willing enough to like let you tell everyone that's your explanation. Which probably means I think there probably is some truth to that. I don't know that that's the entire truth, but I think there is some truth that she probably didn't realize how many people were going to buy from this. But that's a point I want to address a little bit in terms of like, what should you do as an influencer? Because let's say that's really what happened. It was intending originally to do the personalized coaching, but then there's just like way too many people to buy this. First thing I would say is that if you're ever in that situation, like you can stop taking orders, and that's what you really should do. It doesn't have to be permanent, but you can put on like go on your website and on your YouTube or your Instagram and say, look, I have too many people right now. I can't do this. I need to stop taking orders. You can refund if there's too many and you're like, I can only coach 50 people personalized, then you can refund the money before you actually like go down that path. So that's something that like at the outset, that would have been a way better way to handle this if that's really what happened. And does sort of, I do think that it calls into question a little bit sort of the judgment of continuing. I mean, like, not legal judgment, but like personal, your like mental judgment on this. Not really, I guess not mental, but like did you make a good decision? Okay. Is it a good decision to just keep taking these things and keep doing them? It is not. You know you're not going to be able to give what you promised, and as an influencer, your credibility blows up if you don't do that. So what should she have done? In addition to pausing it, I mean, you can go hire other people and say, okay, like I've got this many orders, let me do the 50 that I can do, and then hire someone else to help me. And then the next round of people that I take on, I'll say, look, it won't all be Brittany Dawn. It'll be my, the Brittany Dawn team or whatever. Or you can even share their names. Here's my 4. If you're a fitness influencer and you're growing, here's my team of 4 people. Here, here's Bob, Bill, Jane, Jenny, or whatever, and introduce them and make them part of your cast or whatever. You could have done something like that. You could do change the product up so that it's no longer personalized. You could do any number of things, but selling something that you're not going to be able to deliver is like the one thing not to do. Okay, so that like whatever you're going to do, that can't be the thing that you do, because that leads you down this road. And absolutely, you cannot be doing things that are basically medical advice for people who have serious things like eating disorder. That's not something that you should be doing. That's something that will attract government attention. It is not a good idea. So I think that the way to handle these launches of products, if you are an influencer, is don't bite off more than you can chew. If you find out that you have, just stop eating. like that's really the simple answer to that. And so, and I think that if influencers do that more, they will not get into these legal problems. She probably would be still sitting here with a big fitness empire if she had done that, instead of going down this route. The other thing I will say, and this is something that I see in my videos sometimes whenever I posted a few of these, and I'll see people get on to me like, why don't you just forgive her? This is Christianity. Why do you, and personally, I don't care. I didn't have this. I mean, maybe not don't care, but I'm not involved in this personally. I did not buy a fitness plan. I don't have a dog in this fight other than looking at it sort of as an observer and what I think is the truth of it. But I think that sort of the new audience that she has views this as, well, she should just be let go to go, stop going after her, whatever. I think what I would point out is that there are a lot of people who are still out money on this. And if you are an influencer who has done something wrong, you have to start thinking of ways to like make it right for your audience. I think what she should have done up front, but probably even before the state of Texas came after her, but definitely after it did, was just say, look, mea culpa, my fault. I did something wrong. I cannot pay the full amount right now. But I'm going to start. I'm going to make up a payment plan. I'm going to make a partial payment. I'm going to do whatever. And that really has always been, I think, when people sort of post those comments about like, why just let her alone, just stop. Like you do start wondering, like, I grew up Christian. I don't have any problem with Christianity. And just definitely a lot, I think, not to delve off too much, but I think there's a lot of things that Jesus said that are great, like genuinely. But a lot of them too are, part of forgiveness is earning the forgiveness and showing that you want to sort of make restitution to the people that you've done wrong to. And I think that doing that earlier rather than later is always like the good idea. It would have earned a lot more goodwill. So, she could have been in a situation where she pissed everyone off, but she had maybe spent the last couple of years, instead of fighting, trying to find a way to pay people back. And now it has created a lot of bitterness and a lot of she's paying $400,000 now and not really getting any goodwill for having done it, because she was forced to do it, like dragged kicking and screaming to doing it. So if you're an influencer, like don't do that. Like start trying to make things right. If people are unhappy, if you can't give them the full money back, try to find a way to do something partial. Or just try to do something. But that's really, I think, what has gone haywire here. And yeah, so that's a general influencer advice, not necessarily legal advice. It is like just a better idea. And so what are actually going to be the mechanics of this lawsuit? I'm going to get a little bit into, or not law, the judgment, and how can you claim money back? Because it's very clear that some people are going to get at least some money back through this process from this judgment. So when we get into the meat of the legal parts of this, here you see a definition section. They generally have these in like contracts and settlements because they just sort of, it makes it easier when you can say this term means, like, defendants means Brittany Dawn Davis and Brittany Dawn Fitness LLC. A lot of that is just about not writing the same thing over and over. So if you shorten that to defendants and you don't have to copy paste those two names every time, you can just sort of use some shorter terms here that can cut the length of this document from 25 pages to 16 pages or whatever. So the first thing is these findings. What are these? These are basically having the court, when the court signs this, these will become, right now they're just an agreement, but when the court signs them, they will become findings of fact, which means they are, they would bind Brittany Dawn Davis if there was a future lawsuit. They would bind the fitness company if there's a future lawsuit, if there's this, if there's whatever, if there's a dispute about the agreement. And so these ones are kind of limited. They just basically, the court's only finding like I have jurisdiction, so everyone's agreeing to that. They're agreeing that the parties have agreed to this, that the signatures are correct, and authorized that the settlement is fair, reasonable, and just, and it's best interest to approve this. So basically, all this is just sort of like trying to bolster up the legality of the settlement so nobody can come back and challenge it later. And that's kind of what that section does. Let me get to permanent injunction. This is the part of the settlement that orders Brittany Dawn to like not do certain things that would violate Texas law. And you can see that they have, it's not just her and this company. It also is whether if she's acting, whether it's directly through that or through doing it, or if she tries to set up another company, a trust, there's all these things. But basically, if she makes some other business, she can't just say like, oh, I've made Brittany Dawn Fitness 2 LLC, and so that's not this company. It's a totally separate company, and now it can do these things. They throughout this are making clear you can't do that. I don't think that's because she's done anything that makes them think that she will, or I haven't seen it anyway. That I haven't seen any real plans to go like make another fitness company. Frankly, to me, it seems like the honest thing is that she seems like she's out of that part of the business. She's off to this Christianity influencing stuff, doing the spiritual retreat type things, which is frankly from a like a consumer. I think I said this, but from a consumer protection perspective, is the state's not going to get on you for like giving a spiritual retreat because that's more subjective. Did you give someone value or not? It's hard to say, your spiritual advice violates the law. That you really can't say that. But it is whatever you think about it. It is less potentially harmful to people than giving them advice on like what to do if they are concerned that they're like losing weight to an inappropriate degree, or if they need to, if you have a serious eating problem. That's a different like category of thing. And so this is basically agrees as an order that she can't like offer personalized plans unless they're actually personalized. She can't, she would legally be allowed to sell a nutrition plan or fitness plan, but she can't kind of do the stuff that was violating the law. She can't, if she says it's individual, then you got to be providing the individual coaching. If you say that there's personalized workout routines, then you got to provide personalized workout routines. None of this is that. She's basically being ordered to just kind of follow what it's not a law, but it is what she has to do under the law, because you can't, under Texas law and most states' laws, sell a product that makes promises that aren't what you're actually going to do. So it's like if you're going to do a personalized message, you've got to actually do it. It says you can't. She absolutely cannot represent that she has special knowledge or training to address eating disorders when she does not. And the other thing that I hadn't really seen this, I might have missed it in the earlier ones, but says she can't charge a shipping fee for goods or services exclusively delivered by email. So that might have been tacked on to some stuff where people were getting emails and then being charged a shipping fee, which is a little odd. Whether that was intentional or not, I don't know. Sometimes that's configuration of your shopping cart or whatever, but it does seem that may have been happening because that's why that's in there. So that's what she's ordered to not do. It's not really more than like it wasn't a very aggressive order, I would say. It's basically just saying follow the law. we get to the monetary judgment. This is the amount, and why is it structured this way? I'll explain sort of what's going on here. So it says that it's going to be a total of $531,320, but as we find out later, not really. It's $300,000 in civil penalties pursuant to DTPA. That's the Texas Deceptive Trade Practices Act, which is their consumer protection law. $100,000 in restitution, and $131,000, $320, or $131,320 in attorney's fees. Those are to compensate for sort of the government attorney's time in bringing this case. And that's actually a real low number compared to the amount of work that I can tell has happened just based on looking at some of the docket. Although government attorneys don't really have like a billing rate, they're not as, I don't think they charge at kind of the full rate that a private attorney might, because that would be probably like $1 million or something based on what I've seen. It says that it's further ordered that this payment, they kind of outline how it's going to happen. And it's going to happen. It doesn't happen immediately. So she's being given a period of time, which is 3 years, 36 months, to make these payments. And the way they structured this is there is, and I ran the numbers on this, it's $72,000 total of this has like a set payment schedule. And the rest of it all comes like due at the very end of the 3 years in a lump sum. So the first year, she's only paying $1,000 a month. Second year, she pays $2,000 a month. Third year, $3,000 a month. At the very end, she has to, whatever's left, she's got to pay. So the reason they're probably doing this is I suspect that they've gotten some discovery into her assets and that she doesn't really have enough right now to like pay all of this. And so they are kind of setting this up to say like, look, you do whatever you're doing, keep going with your spiritual influencing retreat things, or whatever you're going to do to earn money. But it's got to be legal, or at least on the fitness side, and you're going to gradually start paying this back. And they phase it in so that she has time to sort of start getting enough income to be able to pay this stuff back. And so, and that's something that I've, sometimes so we do a high volume of settlements because we have hundreds of cases at any given time at our law firm. And you do sometimes when you have defendants who just have no money, that's something where it might make sense to make sure your client gets the most money possible is to sort of agree to something where it comes in over time. This is a lot of time, but I do think that the state knows to some degree what she has or what they think she has. And so they're making a decision based on that. And then this would come in at the $400,000. Now, this paragraph does something a little bit unique, which is that the attorney's fees, if she pays back the $400,000, this $131,000 goes away. So it says that there's this, they call it an abatement period, which abating means like it would just kind of go away if you meet the requirements up here. So if she makes all these payments on time, she pays the full amount, and there's no finding by court that she failed to comply with the judgment, then the attorney's fees shall be permanently and unconditionally dismissed against defendants. So this is like a carrot, like go make your payments, because if you don't, you're just going to owe even more money. And then the next thing they do is this sort of, they say it's allocated first as restitution, then civil penalties, then attorney's fees. Why are they doing this in this order? Restitution is paying back money to the people who didn't get what they ordered. So what they're saying is, look, first thing let's do is give people money back. If we're not giving the money back, and I'll get into how that could happen a little bit below, then it goes to civil penalties, which is a payment to the government just as like a punishment. And then attorney's fees is the last amount. So the reason that they're structuring it this way is basically to make sure that as much money as possible goes to the people who tried to order these fitness plans, which is smart and makes sense. Now, this next part here is what anyone who bought this kind of plan from Brittany Dawn is going to want to know about, because this is how the process for which people are going to get their money back if they apply. So it says that it's ordered that money allocated as restitution pursuant to this judgment shall be distributed at the sole discretion of the state of Texas. State's going to send a claim form to eligible consumers. So if you are someone who is part of sort of this whole mess, you're going to get probably in the mail what's called a claim form. And that's something you fill out to say, hey, here's, I don't know what's going to be on it specifically. They're generally going to say, can you tell me how much you spent? Tell me, when did you do it? They may ask your name, just sort of, whatever information about you. It's something that this usually happens in class actions. That's probably the most time that you may have seen this, when you get those little email notices that are like, did you buy at Target or something from 2021 to 2022? And they'll, everyone who fills out the claim form becomes part of the group of people who get compensated. And you see that this says, So like what happens if there's not enough money to pay everyone? That says consumers may receive pro rata refund amounts if claimed amounts exceed the restitution payments. So if there's basically if the $400,000 is not enough to pay back everyone who fills out a claim, then what will happen is that like let's say I don't know how many people it would be because I think everyone paid different amounts, but let's say a number of people fill it out who were damaged at $600,000 in total damages. That means everyone would the most likely way they would do it is everyone would get 2/3 of the amount that you spent on these this coaching stuff. And then this says if the total claimed amounts by all eligible consumers is less than the restitution award. So this is what happens if let's say there's only $200,000 worth of damages among the people who claim it. Then it says any residual amounts for such unlocated eligible consumers will be allocated to the Supreme Court Judicial Fund as civil penalty. So basically, they're setting this up so like, okay, if a bunch of people claim, then maybe everyone doesn't get all their money, but they get a percentage that's kind of fair among each other. If not enough people claim, then all that money just goes to this like fund for the Texas Supreme Court where they just like do stuff that's supposed to be kind of public interest things. So fill out your claims. You don't want the money going. I mean, I don't know. It's not terrible, but like if you were injured by this in any amount that matters to you, I would say go ahead. When you get the claim form, fill it out. It should be coming at some point. Then it says they have. This is just another. It basically orders that the civil penalties can't be discharged in bankruptcy. That's kind of the same thing, but they're having the court actually order it. And then they are kind of worried about this bankruptcy. They say if there is a bankruptcy, then like this paragraph lets the plaintiff, which is the state of Texas, it says essentially if Brittany Dawn tries to nuke their penalties and fails, then the state of Texas can go for like the full amount they were originally trying to claim. So they can like basically go, okay, if the settlement's out the window, then I'm going back to try to get $1 million from you, or unless the receiver or the trustee who's a person in bankruptcy who tries to like get money if they find it. So those are kind of like contingency plans for the state. And then they have ways that Brittany could be in default of this. That's if she is found to violate all those restrictions or any of those restrictions, if she doesn't pay the money, or if she files for bankruptcy anytime in the next 3 years. So she's sort of it's probably not going to be filed for bankruptcy because it would cause serious problems with this order, at least for 3 years. And then the bankruptcy also would get rid of that thing where the attorney's fees sort of can be eliminated if she pays the full amount in a timely fashion. So it's very much designed to try to keep her from trying to get out of this. It says basically if there is a default of this, then the state of Texas can go like enforce it again, and they can do other things. This little part says that this judgment is binding on what it says is all successors in interest of and assigns of defendants. So if she transfers the ownership of the company, this says, of this Brittany Dawn Fitness, then this judgment follows them along. And if they change the name, she's got to tell them. If she dissolves the entity, she's got to tell them. All the employees, I guess she's supposed to send a copy of this to all the employees, independent contractors for these companies, which I think is designed to make sure that everybody there knows, like, you have to follow these rules. And then this part I think is generic. I looked at this. I don't think this is specific. It could be. I don't think it's specific to something they're doing. Just based on what I'm looking at, it seems like a clause they would have in general. But basically, orders Brittany Dawn to cooperate with like any other investigations by the Texas Attorney General. Are they looking at someone else? I don't know. There's nothing about the facts that I've heard that suggests that there's someone else out there that they know about, but they may have found something in discovery, or they may just be putting this in as like a standard, like if we discover something else, we want her to have to like work with us. Very hard to tell from the outside whether there's anything to this. My kind of gut says probably not, but who knows? And the only reason I say that is just because I haven't heard of anything suggesting there was any other like company or something involved in this. It's kind of thing where there's enough people talking about this on social media that probably people would be, someone would be leaking it or talking about it or whatever if there was somebody else doing this stuff that was kind of related to this, all what happened. And then a lot of this other stuff is just sort of, these are just things that are designed to kind of address little random things that can happen to make sure this judgment is enforceable. And the state is kind of saying, I don't approve of any of your practices just because I have this, and don't make changes in your business without telling us. And, general, then they have like an interest rate if the amount isn't paid, which is pretty high. And so she definitely has a big incentive to pay this off. So that is the unsigned judgment at this point. And once the court, presumably, usually they will sign it. It's pretty highly likely in a situation like this that it does get signed, and then it becomes a final enforceable judgment. And Brittany will be making payments that at some point hopefully will go to the people who bought this and weren't happy with it. The saga is over of all this Brittany Dawn stuff. At least this part of it, I think that's probably a good thing. I do think that it's much better to have taken this money and instead of spending it on lawyers doing a trial, to have given some money back to the people who were injured here. It does seem from this like now there really isn't a dispute that there was some kind of injury. Brittany Dawn says that she got overwhelmed, but still that does still mean that there are people who didn't get what they paid for, and it does still mean that it is understandable why those people have not been very happy, sort of watching her on social media and watching money be spent on stuff when their money is kind of gone, and they never got what they thought they were going to get, or in some cases maybe worse. But I think this does illustrate to people why influencers are going to face sort of more scrutiny whenever they start stepping into stuff. Like they could face state government scrutiny. You can get sued by private attorneys or people who are injured. They could have sued individually if they'd wanted to, and some of them may have gone to small claims court, things like that. This judgment doesn't really stop them, I don't think, if they want to go do that themselves, if they're still within the time limit when they can. But in general, this sort of gives her a path out. It gives a path to an end to this, which does give at least some compensation to people. It's never going to be the full amount that everybody wants because some of that money will have been spent. But I do think the lessons are to be real careful about what you spend, and maybe don't fight to the end if you get in one of these lawsuits. Like if your case is bad, it's just like at some point you got to accept that it's bad and try to find a way out. If you haven't heard any of the rest, you can go. I'm going to stick links to all the other videos that I made that went through this in more detail. If you want to watch from start to finish, it's sort of what happened with this. And if you want to, subscribe if you want to see other celebrity videos, and there should be some other ones on the end screens for you to watch if you are interested.